Okay, so this is the debut feature-length film by writer-director Lisa Joy. And that name immediately rang some bells, but I couldn't quite place it. But apparently she's the co-creator of the TV show Westworld, and that makes a lot of sense. So I have definitely seen that name pop up in the credits quite a few times. And yeah, she hasn't actually done a ton of other things, and nothing I've ever seen personally. But as I said, this is her first foray into feature-length films, and from what little digging I did, it would appear that this script has been around for quite some time now, since before Westworld actually. And with the success of that show, she's finally had the chance to get it made, which is great. And knowing the connection between the two, you can clearly see some similarities between them. However, by and large, this is a rather different type of project than Westworld. And the basic story here is that we're in the future and a lot of coastal towns have been flooded by rising sea levels, including Miami where most of this takes place, and the plot revolves around a certain type of technology. One that allows people to experience their memories like they're actually there once again. And we follow this guy played by Hugh Jackman who runs one of these facilities. He's basically a merchant of nostalgia, that's more or less what he's in the business of. And I'm not really gonna get into much more detail about the plot here, but this is sort of a neo-noir detective mystery type thing, and while Jackman's character isn't technically a detective, he might as well be. He plays the role of one in a sense, and he gets wrapped up in this thing he has to solve. I mean, you even get the gruff-voiced narration, and the whole thing takes place in the seedy underworld. And you know, I have to say I really like the overall aesthetic, the production design of this one. Because it has this interesting, almost Bioshock-esque look and feel to it. With a lot of old school art deco and other type of classic architecture too. Mixed with some old-timey technology that's blended with more modern and futuristic stuff. And I feel like it really found a nice balance between the retro and the more futuristic elements. Now when it comes to the actual setting of the flooded city, it was pretty cool too. I liked the flooded cityscape. And it did end up tying into the storyline a little bit too, but at the same time it did feel a tad bit gimmicky. Like the setting didn't need to be this elaborate at all, but then again I guess the movie wouldn't have stood out as much either. And felt as unique. Now when it comes to the actual story and the plot here, I found it to be pretty decent. And at the end of it, it turned out to be fairly clever. I liked what they did with it. But at the same time I couldn't help but to feel like the whole thing was a little bit convoluted. And overall too, and I'm not sure why, but the movie just felt a tad bit tame. And at some point I realized it had a PG-13 rating, and that absolutely makes no sense to me. Why would you make a movie like this that's essentially a gritty neo-noir at heart, PG-13 rated? I feel like that just takes the punch out of it, gets rid of all the grit and the rough edges. Especially considering that this is not a Marvel movie, you don't need to appeal to a super wide audience with this. Kids don't need to go see this, in fact I don't think most kids have any interest in seeing a movie like this. Actually, funnily enough, I would argue kids would be more interested in seeing this if it was a bit grittier and grimier. And not this slightly watered down version of what it could and I feel like probably should have been. Now with that being said, I still found this to be perfectly watchable and I didn't mind it at all. But I did like the style and the concept more than the actual story here. So at the end of the day, I feel like giving this one something like a solid 6. Boop. And yeah, I would encourage you to maybe check this one out if you like these sort of movies. Or you could just skip it too, after all, I'm not your dad. But hey, what are your thoughts on this? Have you seen it? Did you like it? Let me know. And if you enjoyed the video, maybe give it a thumbs up or sub to the channel because that would be fantastic.